Hey everyone, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. 2022 was both a good and bad year for Pixar. The first film they released that year was Turning Red, which was a good, fun, and nostalgic movie due to it taking place during a year that I grew up in and have fresh memories from. Plus, Turning Red takes place around late spring 2002, which would mean that I would be around 11 years old at the time. Sadly, instead of being released on the big screen, it was streamed to Disney Plus like Luca and Soul were previously. The second Pixar film of 2022 was Lightyear, and while I am happy that it was Pixar's return to the big screen, and I thought it was a pretty interesting movie, sadly it bombed at the box office. But what are my thoughts on the latest Pixar film? Well, why don't we find out? Released on June 16th, 2023, the movie is Elemental. And now, let's get started. The story takes place in a city where water, earth, fire, and air residents live together. There, we are introduced to Ember, a tough, quick-witted, and fiery young woman whose friendship with a fun, sappy, go-with-the-flow guy named Wade challenges her beliefs about the world they live in, and together, they're about to discover something very elemental, how much they actually have in common. So, what do I think of the movie? Well, in my opinion, it was a pretty good movie, but it's not technically one of my favorite animated films of 2023, or one of my favorite Pixar films. But now, let's move on to Mustang notes. The film was directed by Peter Sohn, who previously directed Partly Cloudy and The Good Dinosaur. Sohn pitched the concept to Pixar to develop the movie based on the idea whether fire and water could ever connect or not. Sohn also says the idea for the film was inspired by his experiences as the son of immigrants in New York City in the 1970s. He stated, "My parents immigrated from Korea in the early 1970s and built a bustling grocery store in the Bronx." He also stated, "We were among many families who ventured to a new land with hopes and dreams, all of us mixing into one big salad bowl of cultures, languages, and beautiful little neighborhoods. That's what led me to Elemental." Sohn cited romantic films like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Moonstruck, You've Got Mail, Amelie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and The Big Sick as particular influences when he enjoyed leaning into the rom-com as a storytelling genre. For the language of the fire elements, David J. Peterson, who has constructed languages for Game of Thrones and Dune, co-created Fire-ish, based on fire sounds that are part of Ember's family. Production of the movie was completed on March 24, 2023, after the final frame was approved, and 7 years were spent on it, both in the studio and at the filmmakers' homes. Also to note, the film is dedicated to Ralph Eggleston, Thomas Gonzalez, Amber Martorelli, and J. Garrett Sheldrew, all of whom sadly died in 2022 respectively. Now, as for the animation, well, since this is a Pixar film, I say the animation is very creative. To me, the element characters, which consist of water, fire, air, and earth, are not only reminiscent to Partly Cloudy, but I think the way Peter Sohn's animation team personified them ranges from simple to complex. Plus, I think Element City looks great too. Fun fact, Element City was modeled after New York City as a series of immigrant neighborhoods composed of organic materials that would complement each element. An example would be Firetown, which was constructed with ceramic, metal, and brick. The set designers of the studio looked to cities like Venice, and Amsterdam for inspiration. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, in which most of the production took place, the production team of the film were unable to travel to these cities for research. So they spent many hours watching point of view city tours on YouTube to get inspiration for Element City. To feel less like an alien version of real world cities, production designer Don Shank and his team brainstormed the evolution of elemental beings and their civilization. Also, I must mention that this is the second animated film that I saw in theaters with vocational visions this year. The first being Illumination's Super Mario Bros. Movie. However, while I do think this is a good movie, I kinda have issues with a bit of prejudice and racism parts, kinda like what Zootopia had. But still, it's a good movie nonetheless. And, of course, I'm surprised that this movie doesn't technically have a main antagonist. But anyway, now that we're done with Mustang notes, let's move on to the characters and the voice actors who brought them to life. Our main character, Ember Lumen, is voiced by Leah Lewis, best known from the Half of It and Nancy Drew TV shows. Ember is a tough, quick-witted 20-year-old fire element who works at her family's convenience store in Firetown. But she has trouble controlling her explosive temper. What she lacks in patience, she more than makes up for in love for her family. As the only child of immigrant parents, Ember is keenly aware of how much they sacrifice to give her a better life. She's determined to prove herself to them and looks forward to taking over the family business, the fireplace, when her dad Bernie retires. Also, in my eyes, Ember seems like a very relatable character, since sometimes her explosive temper is a sign of pressure. Plus, I think her fire bike is really cool, and I like her talent for glassmaking. And I find it pretty interesting that Ember's always wanted to see a Visisteria flower ever since she was little, due to it having the ability to grow and survive in water, earth, air, and even fire habitats. Next is Wade Ripple, voiced by Mamadou Athie. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Whom I remember from Jurassic World Dominion. Wade is a sappy water element who works as a city inspector living in Element City. I find this guy to be a go-with-the-flow kind of guy, and I think he's very nice, social, and enthusiastic. Also, Wade seems very sensitive, and he cries for many things. Plus, I find Wade to be very supportive to Ember, and I like that he's willing to do anything to make her happy. Also, I thought the scene where he takes her to the flooded garden central so that she could see a Vivisteria was a very touching moment. Next we have Ember's parents, Bernie and Cinder, voiced by Ronnie Del Carmen and Sheila Omi. Bernie is the hard-working owner of his family's convenience store in Firetown who plans to retire, and he hopes that his daughter might run said store afterwards. Plus, Bernie is very prejudiced towards non-fire elements, especially water, mainly due to other elements being xenophobic while they were trying to find residents. And Cinder is a matchmaker who has a natural gift to smell true love in a fire person's smoke, whether they know it or not. Plus, she boasts numerous matches throughout her tenure, and while she is a no-nonsense and traditional mom, she also dreams of her daughter Ember finding love of her own. As for the other characters, we have Wade's mom Brooke, voiced by Catherine O'Hara. I find Brooke to be a very supportive mom, and she's very welcoming upon meeting Ember. And I'm glad that she has nothing against fire elements. And like Wade, Brooke is very sensitive and tends to cry a lot. Plus, due to her being an architect, I think Brooke is very creative, though she wishes to not receive any credit for her work. She's also capable of recognizing potential in other elements when she saw Ember's capability in making glass sculptures. As a result, Brooke sought to give Ember an opportunity to express her talent, believing that she has the opportunity to express her art to the world. Next up, we have Claude, voiced by Mason Wertheimer, marking this as his feature film debut. Claude is a young Earth kid who lives in Firetown, and he has a sweet crush on Ember. To me, while he's not in too much of the movie, Claude is street smart with a caring, gentle heart. Though I kind of find the scenes where he gives Ember a flower that he grows from his armpit a bit creepy and disgusting. And finally, we come to Gail Cumulus, voiced by Wendy McLendon-Covey, whom was in Bewitched, The Search for Santa Paws, Bridesmaids, and Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween. Gail is an air element with a big personality, a lot of bluster, and a fluffy pink complexion. As Wade's boss, she takes her duties at City Hall very seriously, and she expects a lot from her employees. And she does not like to hear excuses or sob stories for safety and health violations. Plus, as an avid airball fan, Gail can become very frustrated when her favorite team, the Windbreakers, underperform. But, on a rare chance, Gail can also be very lenient and helpful, especially towards Wade and Ember, whom she views as a great couple. And now on to my final words. Overall, while Elemental is not one of my favorite Pixar films, I still find it to be a pretty decent movie. The animation is very creative, simple, and complex. The story is very inspirational, serious, and romantic, though I still wonder what it'd be like if it didn't include any racism or prejudice. The main characters, Ember and Wade, are very relatable, and I think they make a great couple together. The supporting characters can range from okay to decent, and I think the voice acting is very well done. So, after seeing this movie in theaters, not only did it put me in tears, but it makes me hope to find my own love interest. And if you folks love Pixar, then be sure to give this movie a watch. But I wouldn't recommend little kids to watch it on their own though. I give this film a rating of 83% out of 100. Oh, and be sure to not miss the animated short Carl's Date, which plays before the movie. So, you may be asking, what's Pixar gonna give us next? Well, judging by this poster, this one looks promising and literally out of this world. Well, anyway, that's all for now. Be sure to join me next time where we look at a recent musical adaptation of one of Roald Dahl's classic books, Mustang Power.